it's important because the results of a lot of studies that have been done in the fall and that have recently been echoed by the CDC in the last week or so have indicated that folks that are least likely to get reinfected are those who have had prior infections. And this is regardless of vaccination status. So, you know, and if 75% of the folks have already had COVID, we're talking about a very low risk to our student population. So I just implore the board to please end this policy, and I can get copies of any of the studies that I've cited to. So thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm First Bailey. First Bailey. I actually teach in the neighborhood school district. It's a show, man. It is a show. It's going quite nuts. The contact tracing, the hours that are spent on it it just blows your mind when you sit down and you think, I didn't get a hold of that parent. I gotta call so-and-so's friend. Thank you, nurses, for all of your time. I just want to ask though, if a staff member ends up getting COVID due to contacts at work, what is the plan for COVID leave? Are you going to change your current policy? I think you need to think about that. Because if teachers, staff are coming to work and contact out at work and are asked to leave because they're essential employees coming to work every day during this endemic, consider what you will offer them for COVID leave if they have to go home for that. I want you to think about that. Thank you.
What's the current policy for that when a student, contact staff member gets it? What is the policy?
We cover their time for them. We do not use their sick days. Correct.
So do we cover 5 days, 10 days, however long they're out? I'm just curious.
We've moved it as things have changed. So we'll have to talk about it if, we do this tonight. So when it was 10 days, well, we started when it was 14 days, and then when it was 10 days, we covered all 10. When things were moved down to 5 days and you could come back, then it would move down to 5 days. So we've just followed the.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
No.
Not yet? Can you hear me now? Okay. I just really want to thank Mr. Sheets for recommending the UV air cleaners in schools. I was at the budget meeting last week, I guess it was, and got a little bit of education on where these funds come from, and I understand that COVID recovery funds cover filters and air cleaners for schools. Not only is it useful for COVID, these air cleaners kill viruses, bacteria, they clean some allergens from the air. Doctors' offices use them, hospitals use them, and it would probably help allay a lot of fears over COVID, as well as help kids just stay healthy in general, and teachers, everybody in the school. So I didn't want that comment to go sort of get buried in the discussion. I think it would be a really good investment. Thank you.
We have 2 public comment to read tonight.
Is there anyone that is here that would like to make a comment? We do have a couple of comments that people have emailed in. Anyone here?
Kathy Chatta. I'm Kathy Chatta, and I have 3 students in the county right now. And I just think we were all shocked at how many kids have missed school due to the quarantine. I have a daughter who missed 20 days of algebra. And the teachers have done a phenomenal job reaching out and giving support to the students, but nothing can take the place of 20 days of classroom math. And, to go through it. So, and we've been affected, I think we've had 4 quarantines in our family, and it really has affected the children and their performance at school.
Thank you.
My name is Samantha Martinowski. I have a high school student who's a junior this year. He spent his end of his freshman year at home, and he spent his sophomore year virtual learning, which did not go well, and I was very happy to put him back into school for his junior year, and was not happy with the mask policy, so I'm thrilled that it has reversed and he can be unmasked at school. And I'm in support of changing or not eliminating the mitigation plan, but changing it for a lower quarantine period, because my child has missed, just like a lot of other kids here, he has been sent home for contact tracing twice. He has missed almost 30 days of school. He did test positive in October for COVID, and he spent 10 days at home for that. But, and I know that the nurses are working really, really hard. I used to work in education, so I know how many off hours go into it. But this is a very small school with a small population, at least compared to what I grew up in. And my son started exhibiting symptoms on a Sunday. He had had symptoms of like allergy type things for about 2 weeks where he was in school, exposed to other kids. He tested positive on a Sunday. I kept him home on Monday, or he started symptoms on Sunday. I kept him home Monday, took him to the doctor on Tuesday when he tested positive. He doesn't live at home. He lives with a friend who is also a junior here at the high school. He was quarantined, the friend was not. So they're living in the same house. The friend was not quarantined, and no contact tracing was done because he did not test positive or exhibit symptoms while in school, even though he had been in school that Friday. So as many hours are going into this, I feel like it, in such a small population, if it really was a big deal, the entire school by that point would have had COVID from a medical perspective. But nonetheless, my son's friend who he lives with has been quarantined now 4 times this year and is failing most of his classes because he's not getting classroom instruction. And prior to COVID, if a student had missed more than, I think it was like 28 days of school, they would have truancy officers at their house, and they would be put on an attendance plan. And attendance had been so important prior to this that the student have to be in school to learn. And they do. It heavily affects them to have to sit at home and not, and again, the teachers did a great job with my son trying to get him through. He failed a class. As a result, he couldn't recover from it. But it's silly. It honestly is, it's silly the amount of time that's being wasted contact tracing these kids when they're on the bus together, they're in the building together, they eat lunch together. If it really was that big of a deal, and I'm not saying COVID's not real, don't get me wrong. COVID is real and it affects people. It's not as big a deal as everybody made it out to be, and I think that the school nurses, especially, could be utilized in such a better way than spending all this time tracking kids down when there's, my son's friend never tested positive. All those days of school missed, never tested positive. So I think the resources could be spent better in other ways.
Thank you.
My name's Eric Moeller. I have 2 students currently in the school system. concerning the contact tracing, is it getting rid of all contact tracing, or is it just reducing it to people who are test positive and then they contact trace from that point on?
That's yet to be determined what's going to happen, but I don't,
Because if you don't do any contact tracing, how are you supposed to figure out if you have an outbreak, where that outbreak begins? How are you supposed to mitigate those circumstances at that point?
We would be following those that have tested positive and they're in the classroom or in certain areas of the same students that they're around to start testing positive.
Okay, because also on CDC, CDC guidelines, if everybody wears masks, which y'all got rid of 2 weeks ago, you would have to be doing less contact tracing because you would be within a 3-foot radius of that person who tested positive for COVID, rather than an entire room or an entire section of a room based on people who are not masked. So if we had kept the mask, then you ladies would potentially have a lot less time, or a lot more time, to do other things rather than having to contact trace based on current CDC guidelines. But getting rid of masking, it increased a lot of the workload because now you have to, anybody who's unmasked and tests positive, you have to quarantine the entire classroom based on CDC guidelines. So it's kind of a win-lose situation. So I'm just kind of curious, where this is all going. I understand the resources are finite, and I understand that changes need to be made and all that. So, I just hope that you do keep our students in mind when making these decisions, and not do it based on personal beliefs or anything like that. Medical science.
thank you. Anyone else in the audience? If not, Ms. Patterson, would you please read our comments?
The first one says, Chairman Allen, I apologize for not being at this meeting in person. I've read and reread the mitigation plan updates and think they're well thought out. It balances the need of children to stay in school and as much as possible by shortening the COVID isolation time when necessary. The contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine steps are detailed with some references. Although this board cannot please everybody, you are a breath of fresh air and exude a much better caring interaction and response from the community than the last. I request my comments for you.
Thank you.
That was from Lisa Davis in Locust. The second one is from Rebecca Jasmine, the media specialist and president of the Madison County Education Association. She said, when I came to Madison County Public Schools, I took a significant pay cut. I stayed here for the last 6 years because I felt that the administration and school board have always cared about not only the students, but the staff as well. I felt that I have found a place that understands that my working conditions are the students' learning conditions. I felt valued. Even though most of the pandemic, I felt that the school system cares about the whole community. I no longer feel that way, and I am not alone. I've had several members of the MCEA contact me to express concerns about the removal of the mask mandate and the prospect of further erosion of the COVID-19 mitigation plan. The concerns range from being concerned for the health and safety of themselves and family members to feeling that the lives of the educators that serve this county are no longer valued. The educators of this great school district have worked tirelessly during this global pandemic. We have cleaned the buildings and buses, reassured concerned families, served as liaisons between the school and families, found new ways to ensure that the students have meals, and adapted our lessons and classroom environments to meet the ever-changing needs of the students. One of the goals of the school board states develop a long-term plan for addressing the well-being of students and staff members. How does removing the mitigation strategies that have been scientifically proven to protect students and staff meet this goal? Who have you spoken to about what is best for the individuals that you have assumed responsibility for, and what are their qualifications? You talk about parental rights. We would love to have parents and families more involved in the education of their students. What about the rights of a staff to a safe work environment? You talk about the mental health of students. What trauma-informed practices are you all engaging in? The survey that is constantly being referenced was done in late July, early August. What have you done to get recent information to base your decisions on? When was the last time you spent time with the educators and students in the buildings? There is a serious substitute teacher shortage that negatively impacts the education of students daily. Have you thought about serving as a substitute teacher to help alleviate this crisis? We still have unfilled instructional positions. Our staff is beyond tired. We are demoralized. Something needs to be done to ensure that there are sufficient numbers of staff to keep the schools running at optimal levels. Eroding the COVID-19 mitigation strategies and not ensuring that there is a healthy work environment is not the way to keep staff in the buildings. When individuals are stressed, undervalued, and demoralized, immune systems get compromised. Not all staff can get the vaccine. There are some that have been told by medical professionals and doctors that getting the vaccine would most likely kill them. We have nut-free classrooms to accommodate students that have life-threatening allergies. Why are pulling staff that has life-threatening allergies to the COVID-19 vaccine in a situation that we would not put students? When you all voted to change the mask policy, you asked Ms. Graham if there was enough time to notify the staff. Many of the staff found out about the change through NBC 29, not the school system. There is more to changing plans midterm than just notifying the staff. There needs to be time for staff to ask questions, figure out what things will look like in the schools, make adjustments. It seems that those things were not considered with the decision about the timing of the change in policy. MCEA urges you all to look at the whole Madison County Public School community and how the decisions you all make impact that community as a whole.
Thank you.
What's the MCEA? Is that this inter-union group?
The Madison County Education Association.
Any further comments from anyone?
Sorry,
Oh,
just to
I'm sorry.
point out, this letter was not signed by anybody from the MCEA, just the media specialist at the high school. The position is the president of the association.
Thank you.
Justin, child here in Madison County. I know I can't ask questions, that's not exactly how this works, but it sure sounds a lot like we have a teachers union that's with the lady, I guess, is organized, or is attempting to organize with who wrote in the last letter. If she does, is that something that we permit here? Do we allow teachers unions in Madison County School? Have you guys okayed that? Does she have your endorsement to behave this way? And if not, what are you guys going to do about it? What's the course of action for a teacher who's attempting to organize a teachers union in Madison County Schools? Is that what we do here? Sorry, I know you guys can't answer, but well, not in the short term. But I would really like to know, should a teacher be fired for that? If not for the political flags that she's put up and other statements that she's made. This is not something that I'm okay with my child being exposed to. I heard she was moved from one school to another because she caused similar problems like this. Is this all linked to her trying to start a teachers union? I don't know. I don't have the answers to these questions. I was hoping that you guys might track them down. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from anybody else? So at this point, I'd like to thank Superintendent Graham and Mrs. Young, Ms. Alexander, and Ms. Patterson for all the information that we've been given this afternoon and this evening. And I'm so glad that so many of you came tonight so that you could hear everything that was being said and you would know the numbers and what effect certain things were having. And then you could let us know how it was affecting your child. So we appreciate everything that we've heard and everything that you guys have commented on. So at this point, what we are Hold on just a second. It's been requested that we allow comments from our group, our board. So Mr. Sheeds has a comment that he would like to make.
So, I figure y'all gotta stand up when you're up here talking to, so it's only fair for me to stand up as well. If we go back and look at the slide, we don't have to go back and look at it, but at 1,878 students, if they just missed 10 days, that's 80 hours per student. That's over 150,000 hours of learning time that we've lost. If we look at the contact tracing and what the nurses have had to do, we've lost over 4,000 man hours of actual working time doing something that's, I don't believe has really, like the one lady said, hasn't really given us any bang for the buck. It's been wasted time. Not saying it's 100% wasted time because we appreciate what you're doing, but it hasn't given us the return. We've still had cases, we've still had sicknesses, and it's just a case. Call this computer. Hold on. All right, so thought about this long and hard just in case anyone here is not really sure of where I am standing on the issue. I want to point out quite a few things here. When the virus arrived, personally and my family, we took precautions. I can remember my wife coming home from the grocery store, we were wiping things down, and we took precautions at my employer, mask wearing, checking temperatures, the whole 9 yards and everything. But I recognized subtle hits popping up that this pandemic was blown way out of proportion some time ago, if not an outright lie altogether. No hints were more obvious than when liquor stores and abortion clinics were allowed to remain open because they were essential, and churches were shut down. Okay, this country was founded on religious freedom, and we shut down churches, but we left liquor stores and abortion clinics open. Building supply stores were deemed essential, but gyms and exercise facilities were not. Media, local governments, and police departments were exempt from COVID safety measures. We were told we have to wear masks or we're going to kill somebody, but we can go to a restaurant, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, take off our masks and eat, and apparently we don't transmit COVID while we're having a meal. A couple points I want to bring up here. Masks. You have to think about the size of the virus and what it's floating on, which is aerosols. And we have to think about the ability of the filtration of the mask. Now, aerosols. They're not droplets of water. They're nanometers, okay? We're talking about fractions of microns. Aerosols travel 60 plus feet. We've been doing 6 foot distancing. It's kind of a joke. I mean, it's a joke. N95 and KN95 masks. Does anybody know what the 95 stands for? Raise your hand. 95% filtration capability. It means 5% of particles can get through the mask, and particles are 5 microns or larger. And we're trying to filter out a virus that's a fraction of a single particle, of a single micron. If you went back and looked at the early mask boxes that had masks in them, it said on the box that it did not filter out viruses. So we've got children that are rebreathing bodily waste, increased CO2, increasing nitrogen, increasing the humidity they're rebreathing in, decreasing their oxygen levels. We're robbing students of facial recognition. We're robbing them of learning. We're robbing them of reading lips. We're robbing them of reading facial expressions. Mrs. Graham, thank you so much for the information you went over for contact tracing and quarantine. I want to go on another couple points here. Asymptomatic. Now, this word was pretty much brought up for COVID because people had COVID and had no symptoms. That's literally the definition of a healthy person. So this virus is floating around in the air just looking for someone to infect. It essentially gets hailed in, and children, the vast majority of them, are asymptomatic or healthy because their bodies develop 0 symptoms. So this is going to really sound weird, but I want you to think of children as a filter. Every breath that every individual breathes in, we're filtering that air. And when children's bodies can handle the virus, they're effectively taking care of that in each one of their breaths. So when we've masked these children, we've essentially taken away that child as a filter for the rest of the population. Am I taking up too much time? I got a lot more to go on here. I think y'all will like it all when I get done. Now, here's something else we want to look at. When this virus comes back around, and it will, because they always do, these children, if we would have exposed them to this virus now when they had no symptoms, it'll come back around when they're older, and they'll get sick because they're not in their immune state at this point in time. So think about that. The vaccine, I want to go into something. I got a lot more here. I got to go with.
Can,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, can.
We are relevant to the topic.
Yeah, let's kind of.
Does anybody here not want to hear what I have to say?
I
would like to move on with the policy.
Yeah,
Okay, well, democracy rules. So the vaccine, by definition, is not a vaccine. It does not sterilize or weaken the virus. It does not stop or even decrease transmission. Its sole task is to make your body create spike proteins. I'll shorten this one up since y'all don't want to hear about this a whole lot. But the neat thing is, I did talk to Dr. Robert Malone, his assistant, who developed the mRNA vaccination technology, and she specifically said to me, "I can't believe you guys are still masking children."
Mr. Sheets, if we could go ahead, I know
I've
you
got
have
more to
lots
go.
to say. I know you do.
I've got stuff
but
from parents here.
We,
So we've got some
I know, but
issues.
can we take this as a private
No, ma'am.
conversation
No, ma'am. These
afterwards?
people, I was elected to talk about this stuff, and I'm.
Yeah, I think if we had a motion on the floor and we could make a decision, it would probably be a